Imagine standing before the Great Sphinx of Giza as torrential rains pour down, carving deep channels into its limestone body. Not a scene from today or even ancient Egypt, but from 12,000 years ago. A time when most archaeologists claim humans were merely hunter-gatherers, incapable of monumental architecture. Yet the evidence is literally carved into stone. The Great Sphinx bears the unmistakable marks of water erosion that could only have occurred during a time when Egypt was lush and rainy, thousands of years before the first pharaoh. What if our entire understanding of human civilization is wrong? What if we're not the most advanced humans to have ever lived on Earth? For centuries, Egyptologists have maintained that the Sphinx was carved around 2500 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre. This dating seems logical. The Sphinx sits near Khafre's pyramid, and conventional history tells us that organized civilization only emerged around 5,000 years ago. But here's what's strange. Unlike other Egyptian monuments, there are no inscriptions on the Sphinx connecting it to Khafre. Not a single hieroglyph, not one cartouche. The first mention of the Sphinx in Egyptian records comes much later when Pharaoh Thutmose IV cleared the monument from sand that had buried it up to its neck. The story becomes even more mysterious when we consider that ancient Egyptians themselves treated the Sphinx as an inheritance from a forgotten age, a relic of the first time, or Zep Tepi, when gods walked the earth. Arab historians called it the father of terror, believing it predated even the Great Flood. What if they were right? What if the Sphinx is not just old, but ancient beyond our comprehension? A message in stone from a civilization that thrived before the end of the last ice age? Our journey into the true age of the Sphinx begins with something deceptively simple: rain. In the early 1990s, geologist Dr. Robert Schoch of Boston University examined the body of the Sphinx and its enclosure. What he found stunned him. The limestone showed unmistakable signs of precipitation-induced weathering, deep, rounded, undulating patterns that could only have been caused by centuries of heavy rainfall. Let's be clear about what this means. The last time Egypt experienced significant rainfall was between 7,000 and 12,000 years ago, during what geologists call the African Humid Period. After 3000 BCE, Egypt became the desert we recognize today. If the Sphinx shows water weathering, it must have been exposed during this earlier, wetter era, making it at least 7,000 years older than mainstream archaeology claims. The evidence becomes more compelling when we compare the Sphinx's body to the head. The head shows typical wind and sand erosion, the kind we'd expect in a desert. But the body tells a completely different story. It bears the hallmarks of water erosion, deep vertical fissures and horizontal undulations that simply cannot form in dry conditions. The difference is so stark that many researchers believe the head was actually recarved later, perhaps by Khafre himself, who may have reshaped an older lion's head into his own image. But there's more. The Sphinx sits within an enclosure that was carved out of the bedrock. This enclosure shows the same distinctive water erosion patterns. When Schoch presented his findings to other geologists, experts with no stake in Egyptology, they confirmed his assessment. Dr. Robert Schoch explains, the weathering patterns on the Sphinx and its enclosure are consistent with precipitation-induced erosion. Wind and sand simply cannot create these patterns. Independent verification came from Dr. Thomas Göbekli, a seismologist who used seismic refraction to study the subsurface weathering of the limestone around the Sphinx. His findings? The weathering extended down several meters, consistent with long-term exposure to rainfall, not wind or sand. Egyptologists have pushed back, suggesting these patterns could have been caused by groundwater seepage or occasional flash floods during the dynastic period. But these explanations fall short. Groundwater would have affected all monuments in the area equally, yet neighboring structures from Khafre's reign don't show the same weathering patterns. As for occasional floods, they wouldn't create the consistent, all-over erosion patterns observed on the Sphinx. Another fascinating piece of evidence comes from astronomy. The Sphinx faces directly east, perfectly aligned to witness the rising sun at the equinox. But some researchers like Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval have observed that the Sphinx also aligns with the constellation Leo, as it would have appeared at the vernal equinox around 10,500 BCE, exactly during the period when Egypt received heavy rainfall. Could this be coincidence, or was the Sphinx deliberately designed as a lion, representing Leo, watching the sunrise at a specific astronomical moment? We must also consider what the ancient Egyptians themselves believed. The so-called inventory stela, found near the Great Pyramid, refers to both the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid as existing before Khufu, contradicting the mainstream timeline. Though Egyptologists dismiss this stela as a later fabrication, it adds to the growing list of anomalies surrounding the official narrative. The mystery deepens when we consider that no tools, workshop remains, or construction debris have ever been found around the Sphinx that would connect it conclusively to Khafre's era. The absence of such evidence is telling, especially for a monument of such size and importance. Perhaps most compelling is the sheer scale of erosion. Geologist Dr. Robert Schoch estimates that based on the depth and extent of weathering patterns, the Sphinx must have been exposed to thousands of years of heavy rainfall. This would place its origin firmly in the pre-dynastic era, possibly around 10,000 BCE, making the Sphinx an incredible 12,000 years old, more than twice the age of the earliest known civilizations. So if the Sphinx is truly 12,000 years old, who built it? This question challenges everything we think we know about human history. Conventional archaeology tells us that 12,000 years ago, humans were primarily hunter-gatherers, barely beginning to experiment with agriculture, let alone monumental architecture. Yet the implications are staggering. If the water erosion hypothesis is correct, we're forced to consider the existence of an advanced prehistoric civilization, one capable of quarrying, moving, and carving massive stones with precision. A civilization that understood astronomy well enough to create perfect alignments with celestial bodies. A civilization that has been entirely forgotten by history. Some researchers, like Graham Hancock, suggest this forgotten civilization might be the origin of myths about Atlantis or other lost advanced societies. Others propose that early Proto-Egyptian cultures developed sophistication far earlier than we've recognized. Either way, it means rewriting human history. The controversy has divided scholars. Mainstream Egyptologists maintain that the Sphinx dates to Khafre's reign, pointing to architectural context and stylistic similarities with other Old Kingdom structures. But a growing number of geologists, independent researchers, and even some archaeologists have begun to take the water erosion hypothesis seriously. The debate highlights a fascinating clash between disciplines: geology versus archaeology, physical evidence versus historical context. It reminds us that science is always evolving, always questioning its own certainties. For the public, the mystery of the Sphinx's age has captured imaginations worldwide. It represents the possibility that our understanding of the past is incomplete. that ancient humans might have been more sophisticated, more organized, and more capable than we've given them credit for. The Sphinx isn't the only ancient monument challenging our understanding of history. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to around 10,000 BCE, features massive carved stone pillars created by people supposedly too primitive for such feats. The underwater ruins at Yonaguni, Japan, suggest possible human structures predating the last ice age. The perfectly fitted megalithic stones of Sacsayhuaman in Peru defy conventional building techniques. Each of these sites shares something important with the Sphinx. They push the boundaries of what we thought possible in the ancient world. They force us to reconsider the timeline of human achievement. What makes the Sphinx particularly significant is its location at Giza, the heart of one of humanity's most studied ancient civilizations. If we've misunderstood the age of something so prominent, what else might we have missed? The water erosion hypothesis doesn't just add a few thousand years to the Sphinx's age. It potentially doubles the known timeline of advanced human civilization. It suggests that before Egypt, before Sumer, before any civilization we've named, there existed sophisticated societies capable of feats we still struggle to explain. Maybe the most profound implication is what it means for our own civilization. If advanced societies existed and were somehow forgotten, what does that say about our permanence? About our place in the long arc of human history? This is why the Sphinx matters, not just as an archaeological curiosity, but as a mirror showing us both the depths of our past and the fragility of our present. It challenges us to be humble about what we know and open to what we might discover. If you've been fascinated by this journey into the true age of the Sphinx, hit that subscribe button now. We'll be exploring more ancient mysteries, forgotten knowledge, and alternative historical theories in future episodes. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think the Sphinx could really be 12,000 years old? What other ancient sites should we explore next? And remember, sometimes the most important discoveries aren't new findings, but new ways of seeing what's been in front of us all along. The truth is written in stone. We just need the courage to read it.